The reason that translation can be a little challenging is because you have to decide how you're going to translate something. And so there are typically two camps. And what they call these two camps in terms of the translation philosophy, one of them is called the formal approach. And what that side says is that you ought to look at the original language and you ought to look at the form, hence the formal approach. And when you translate the individual verses, you should, as much as possible, try to stick to a word for word translation. You guys heard that before? A word for word translation. Now, again, if you are bilingual, you should just think about it a little bit before it occurs to you that there really is no such thing as a word for word translation. It's sort of a misnomer, and the reason for that is that no two languages are exactly alike. If you look at page 15 in your textbook, you'll notice that D.A. Carson, who's a great, great author, I love his writings, he points out at least there's more reasons, but I would say these are the four main reasons why translation is difficult. But before we get there, the book offers Matthew 17, verse 18, as an example of a literal word-for-word translation. And so if you look at the very top of page 15, you'll notice the Greek. And if you translate it in the most literal word-for-word sense, then your English translation will read, "And rebuked it, the Jesus, and came out from him the demon, and was healed the boy from the hour that." That is a literal word-for-word translation. Now, is that readable? Is that understandable? Is that accurate? So we need to get rid of this idea that the more something is word for word, or the more literal it is, the more accurate it is. Again, that's a very misleading thing to say. What's going on here is the most obvious thing is syntax. Syntax refers to the order of words in any language. So look at your bulleted points on page 15. The reason that it's difficult, not impossible, or challenging to translate is that no two words are exactly alike. So if you take a word in one language and you find the equivalent word in another language, you'll say, well, this word in Spanish, for example, I speak Spanish, this word in Spanish means this, and I can find an equivalent English word, but even though those words are similar within its own language, you're going to find nuances that don't exist in the receptor language. So if I am speaking Spanish and someone asks me, can you translate what you're saying? And I translate and I find the equivalent English word. Well, even though I have found an equivalent English word, there might be nuances in the Spanish word that don't exist in the English. But translation and understandability, it's still possible. So that's one of the problems. So I don't know if you knew this, but in Greek there are several words for love. Philos is from where we get the word Philadelphia, but sometimes in the Greek it means to greet, like when Judas greets Jesus. It says that Judas greeted Jesus with a kiss, but the actual word means from where we get the word philos, which means to love, but it doesn't mean that in the translation. The other thing that's very interesting, look at your bulleted point number 2, page 15. So I'm aiming to stick very strictly to the textbook. So on page 15 on the second bulleted, I don't remember, but one time in class we were talking about translation, and one of the kids asked about languages, and I said, well, I don't know if we asked Siri or if I asked AI, or Google, I don't remember what it was, but I asked how many words are in the English language and how many words are in for example, in Spanish. And I think Spanish, if my memory serves me correctly, which it often does not, you can search it on your own, but I think the Spanish language had many more words than the English language. So that means that there are words in Spanish that do not exist in English. So what do you do? You have to try to find either a phrase that translates that. So again, that keeps the Bible from being, or that keeps a translation from becoming a word for word translation. And of course, bullet point number 3, languages put words together differently to form phrases, clauses, and sentences. This is what we call syntax. Again, in Spanish, you say White House, white is first, house is second. In Spanish, we don't talk like that. We speak of the noun first, and then so we say Casa Blanca. That's syntax. So when you translate from one language to another, you've got to change the word order. And of course, languages have different stylistic preferences. So I use a word processor when I'm typing stuff up, for spell check and things like that. But one of the things I noticed, it's because it's American-based or English-based, it does not like passive language. And if you are a Christian and if you have been reading your Bible for years, you usually adopt the vocabulary and you adopt the way the Bible speaks. So for example, when people talk about salvation, they don't say things like, well, God saved me. That's speaking, more actively. We don't say stuff like that. We say, I was saved. That's passive. So the Bible speaks, the Greek likes the passive language and English does not. And so